everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're really excited to have this conversation. Leighton couldn't be with us today. He's working on some projects, but I definitely recommend that you check him out on Twitter, LateFX. He's worked with Snap and quite a few other companies, so definitely give him a shout out. We'll miss him today. But I'd love to have the other panelists introduce themselves. We've known each other anywhere from a month to 6 years, so quite a variety of interaction we'll have today from Maddie and Olivia and Eric. Maddie, do you want to go ahead and just tell us about?
Hi, I'm Maddie Callander, VP at BoostVC. We are an early stage venture fund focused on making sci-fi a reality is our thesis. So we've invested in the crypto space since 2012, in VR and AR since 2015. We've been investing in deep tech hardware, robotics, exoskeletons, jetpacks, AI since we started in 2012. So I joined the team in 2015 when we were an all Bitcoin accelerator. And then as we were investing in Bitcoin, all of the developers and the ecosystem were also starting to play with this dev kit that was coming out of the Oculus And so we started to invest in startups, VR startups in 2015. So I think that's a good foundation.
For sure. Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a developer at Jadu. We're building the Mirrorverse, which is an AR game world centered around virtual items owned by our community of players. So we're building a mobile app that aims to be Web3's definitive AR and gaming platform. We have 2 NFT collections of our own, jetpacks and hoverboards. For the rarest tier of hoverboards, we collaborated with Snoop Dogg, Lewis Hamilton, and Grimes. And we've been able to get NFT owners excited by seeing their assets come to life as playable 3D avatars in AR. We've had a community of enthusiasts for Jadu blossom around us, and now we have this incredible momentum, so we're making our own avatar collection and getting to fulfill our dreams to have AR be this world-scale, long-form, story-based experiment.
One of my favorite April Fool's jokes, by the way, so they've done jetpacks and hoverboards, and then they were teasing the next announcement of what would be the next package of NFTs that they were going to come out with, and it was lint rollers.
Yeah, and it comes from a joke around the word community because our CEO bought a lint roller and got an email saying, "Welcome to the community." And so we've been just kind of, we actually have a community, which has been this wonderful, surprising development, and so it came from kind of playing with that word and what it means in all its forms.
As a cat owner, I totally have a relationship with lint rollers. Eric.
So my name is Eric. I run a consulting firm called And Pool, and we're focused on innovative entertainment. And in the past, I've worked with people like Childish Gambino to do augmented reality experiences. And most recently, we launched a lot of very fun XR things, and as well as crypto for Coachella, where we did live AR for Flume on stage, on the Coachella main stage. So that was a very fun first for us. And so I think we're very interested to try to see where Web3 and AR and VR can start overlapping. So that's in a nutshell.
That's cool. The Flume videos on YouTube, they still have some of the AR stuff that you did. Is that right?
Yeah, there's sort of a montage clip. So we had 3 different segments throughout his set. And yeah, it's definitely up on the Coachella YouTube page.
I recommend checking it out.
Cool.
So you are all here at Augmented World Expo. Clearly you know what AR is. You probably know what Web3 is too, as do these folks. But I'd like to have a conversation about how you guys define Web3 and see if there's agreement or how much we agree between the 3 of you. Eric, do you want to start?
Sure. I guess for me, I see Web3 as a stack of many different technologies. With say 5G and crypto at the bottom as the infrastructure, and things like AR, VR, and the quote-unquote metaverses as the sort of UI for accessing those things on top.
And if you add NFT, then you will really have hit the bingo card of all the words that we need to say, and we
that
can
would
just
be
get off the stage
techno bingo,
we're done.
or a drinking game, whichever games you prefer.
It's true. It's true. Anything to add, Maddie or Olivia?
Do you want me to go?
Well, I can just say for what really clicked for me was this infographic on just what it is to log in Web 2 versus Web 3. And Web 2 was sign in with Apple, sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, and Web 3 was connect your wallet. So
Yeah.
shifting from a platform economy to an ownership economy. And I think kind of the coolest thing about it is like it's a subversion of the attention economy. You get rewarded for where you put your attention as opposed to kind of exploited for it.
And the last thing I'll add is just the like philosophical historical shift in the internet. You know, the first 1.0 internet was really just reading and consuming what other people had put. You weren't engaging. The Web 2.0 was reading and writing. So now we're blogging, we're responding, we're commenting, we're foruming, we're Discord, you know, we're on Reddit, like having a conversation. And Web 3 is really, again, about ownership. Like we're taking back the ownership from the big corporations and saying, I want to own my content. I want to be able to read, write, and own everything I'm doing on the internet. And I think that's sort of the fundamental piece that ties all of this together.
And when we talk about ownership, there's also an element of monetization, right? And so how closely do you think that those two things are tied? In the work that you've done or in the things that you've seen?
I can start with just the crypto side. So one of the use cases when crypto was getting off, when Bitcoin was getting off the ground was like, hey, here's a financial instrument we can break past like 1 cent. So micropayments has always been a conversation in crypto because it is really interesting to think of like, we can only go, our banking system right now in the US can only go down to a penny. And in any of the crypto tokens or different forms, you can go much smaller than that. So micropayments became a really hot topic in 2016, 2017, thinking about how could we use the like button and actually reward that creator, with money on a micro scale and have it add up. If there are 1,000 people that like it, that could add up very quickly to actually being a significant form of payment. And I think that conversation's been happening on the Web3, on the crypto side of Web3 for a really long time. And now all of a sudden there's a community coming in together and platforms that are starting to say, hey, we can actually migrate this together and start to make it enabled by our community and building the organization around to create it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for us, we've been making AR for a long time. It's our life's work, huge passion, but we never really saw how we would monetize it. And suddenly with NFTs, we have great resources and we have holders, and it's just an entirely different ecosystem and a financing model that has been a huge gold mine for us as AR people who are using it as a conduit.
And I'd like to dig in a little bit further on the community piece, particularly for Jadu, because it's been an interesting a community for me to watch over time, and maybe the first NFT-related community that I've been a part of. So can you talk about, you've been with Jadu a long time, you've been through that experience of going from a AR-focused company to a Web3, an AR Web3 focused company. Really. What was that like? Maybe you could describe to everybody what the shift was, and then can we dig into the community part of how you've seen, how important is that and how you've seen that's part of the company?
Yeah, we have some great stories about how our community has gathered around us. So kind of the background being we were tied to the entertainment industry. We were working with artists to make volumetric captures, musical holograms, and the fans that we would get as an AR group would be, music fans who would come and go from our content, not really stick around. And now we have diehard Jadu fans who, look at their NFTs every morning when they wake up. And I'd never used Discord before we got thrown into the NFT world, and it's just kind of this really beautiful version of social media where people have meaningful connections. They come in and say, Merry Christmas and Happy Birthday, and two quick stories about our community. The first is there was an exploit on OpenSea where people were scamming and getting items that had been previously listed but no longer listed, and they were able to steal them at prices way below what they were actually worth. And so Jadu went ahead and we made it so that people could buy back their assets from our vault at a lower price and kind of showed this goodwill with our community and created accountability where there is none in Web3. And that kind of goodwill came full circle where we had a mistake that happened. We were airdropping Sandbox versions of our jetpacks. Sandbox is a different platform, and so we're interoperable with them. And there was a mistake where we were doing it in 2 parts. And the first group of people accidentally got the double amount of the Sandbox jetpacks. And so, we don't know these people. There's no accountability. We don't know their names, but mostly everyone returned their extra jetpacks. We're talking about like $200,000 of assets. No reason to do it other than our community loves each other. They want the goodwill. They want this kind of culture where we are. They care about the future of Jadu and the community. So it's that's just like one story that's so mind-blowing for us, and that is a new adventure for AR. So.
And also highlights the challenges that we have with Web3.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So maybe let's dig into that a little bit more. As we continue to shift from a Web 2 to a Web 3 world, will Web 2 disappear? And what are the challenges you see as we get deeper into Web 3?
We're still, we're an app on the App Store, and we're going with Android too, and so we're kind of having to go through them, and there's some challenges in terms of needing to be right with their platforms, even though we're operating in a crypto-based world. So that's kind of one of our intricacies that we're still navigating. But there's still kind of the bridging the gap and figuring out, making kind of people happy who are still in power as we're moving through Web3. Yeah, that's part of it.
And maybe, Maddie, you've seen...
I was going to say, I want to hear the Coachella stories of how it worked.
Which parts?
Yeah, it's a really...
If it's how you were able to tie the in-person event with the Web3 and the AR
Gotcha.
pieces.
Yeah, so we rolled out our first foray into the NFT space with some keys. There were 3 different tiers. And so you could become a lifetime member by purchasing a key. And those were some pretty higher tier NFTs that were selling, I think, in the 150, 180,000 range, which we were shocked that they sold out within, within minutes. We had a couple different other tiers that were much more memorabilia based. And so those were collectibles in themselves, but also tied to actual redeemables on site. And so we had some fun, interesting experiences where we were tying them to the wristbands that you would get at Coachella. So if anybody has visited Coachella, you get a wristband, and you use this to get in and out of gated areas. It's like a NFC reader. And so we were tying the NFTs to the wristbands, and sometimes the readers would work and sometimes they wouldn't. So we definitely had some interesting learnings from that. But people could come to a space and trade them in for T-shirts and swag and sort of memorabilia, which is a big part of, I think, how people associate memories with past Coachellas. And so I think that was kind of for us like a first entry point. But I think there's a lot more functionality that we're looking to build. We launched our Discord also for the first time. And so we, I think within a couple of months, had about 8,000 people who were in there actively engaging. And we did see a really interesting bifurcation of the folks that were in there. Some were just diehard festival people who were just connecting with people, working out where their camps are, working on logistics. And then there are the other people in there looking to trade the NFTs. And we're looking for that kind of commoditization side of things. So it's been very interesting. Honestly, this is year 1, and we have a lot more planned for year 2 to try to work through those things.
I mean, it's been interesting to see how Discord has become the platform for NFT communities, right? Because it was used for this other thing. These people that were going in to look for information and, to a certain extent connect, but not really. But it's the foundation for a lot of the DAOs out there, which I think is super interesting. The other thing I loved about the Coachella experience is that there was real value tied to the NFT, right? It truly is the actual use of a contract because you got certain privileges based on the NFT that you acquired. So on that end, super exclusive. I think definitely like $180,000 was one of them. It was insane. On the other hand, you also had NFTs for literally everybody that had a bracelet. So that's, like 160,000 people or whatever it was that went to Coachella.
So that was actually a fourth tier, which was great that anyone who purchased a ticket would get a free NFT. And it was a really fun case study where there was a guy who was a little bit older, and I think his son had talked him into going to Coachella. And he was kind of standing in the corner redeeming his In Bloom. So we had these seeds that would come out that when you first got the NFT, it was this sort of funky psychedelic Coachella seed. And this was a bit of a metaphor for us being away for a little while during COVID, 2 years to be exact. And on the day of the festival opening up, it would bloom into a really beautiful flower. And we partnered with Jonathan Sawada, one of my personal favorite artists.
Nice.
And this gentleman who was standing in the corner at the redemption zone said this was the first NFT he had ever gotten. And if it wasn't for the sort of onboarding process, he probably never have gotten an NFT. And so it was an interesting way to offer just access. And we were targeting to try to have 30,000 people redeem them. And I think we had 64,000 out of 250,000 people. So I think that was actually an amazing adoption rate.
Yeah, for a first time, for sure. Yeah, I went to Coachella this year, and as I was walking into the entrance, I heard this one guy say to the other guy, okay, but I really have to go to the NFT thing. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's nice that, it's a different use case. You're at a music festival, and you've got this integration with not only NFTs, but augmented reality, which is really fun.
I think there's a NFT is, although it's a hype word and there's been a lot of hype in the last 2 years, there's an association that there is value that can be created without a physical representation of it. Mm-hmm. So, historically, digital value didn't really exist, and kind of Bitcoin was the first digital good that could theoretically hold its value. And now we're saying, okay, now it's beyond the financial institution. It's beyond the financial side of it, and now there can actually be objects that can stay valuable over time. So we've started to enter the realm of collectibles, of like trading cards and comic books and things that, when they're minted, there is one edition, and they evolve over time. But that original comic book from 1957 is the most valuable version of its time today. And so there is a precedent that's sort of being set that this digital object has value and could retain value over time. It's a hypothesis, I think, that we're all kind of experimenting in right now. Right. But the backing and the infrastructure layer is like interesting for communities, because now your community can be valuable. You're not just a Slack community, you're not just a Discord community that's playing a game. Now there's intrinsic value to the objects that you're playing the game with. And there's potentially monetary value for you either earning it from playing the game or trading it or selling it to other people in the gameplay itself. So,
and the fact that it could not only be visual, but it could be audio as well, right? So they're audio-based NFTs.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting concept.
And I guess just for the technical, and you can also cut me off if you want to explain it too, but just the technical side of an NFT is a smart contract. So the smart contract, once you have locked and loaded this smart contract, you can actually tell it, this was what Ethereum brought to the world when Ethereum launched, was, hey, let's not just make it a financial exchange. Let's be able to add objects, code in whatever information you want to be able to code into the smart contract. So that's just sort of the basic side of what's happening right now, is that everyone is saying, now we can actually code in the value, we can code in the object, we can codify audio, we can codify music, you could say you could create a stamp of a proof of authorship if I wrote a poem and logged it somewhere, and I have a proof of authorship of that poem that I wrote. So there's you can really create, it's an open-ended tool that has a lot of potential for a lot of different directions, which is why I think it's been really interesting to see all the different use cases come up so quickly.
And I would say for us, collectibles is definitely a really fun part of the Coachella experience. People line up for over an hour or 2 hours just to get swag and T-shirts and to have their memorabilia from that particular festival. But we see the potential for much more utility as well through the smart contracts, that you can actually use a wallet to make purchases or to gain access to a VIP. So that virtual token is actually your ticket to ride. So we're continuing to expand beyond just the collectible aspect of things.
Mm-hmm.
Something we've talked about at Jadu is doing something like adding on to your NFT's data, something like if you were the first avatar to play this game at Niagara Falls, you suddenly have in your smart contract, in your data, that's your avatar's like claim to fame. And we don't know if you keep it, if you sell it, it's a whole mechanic we have to figure out, but we can also just tie the data of the NFT to the real world and things that you've done there.
Oh, interesting. It almost creates a story.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a part of our big world story, though. Yeah.
I like it.
And I think one of the coolest parts of a lot of the communities that I'm in right now too is the storytelling. Like people are excited to tell stories. I'm in a community called Crypto Covens, and they just launched they're an NFT community. They launched their NFT in December last year. But it is like the most joyous community experience I've ever had, where I get to meet people, I get to engage. They're now like launching a whole set of publications. You can animate your NFTs now. I think that's also going to lead to AR, where I will be able to bring that character, my avatar with me to different places. But it's a really like thoughtful experience, and the storytelling part is community driven. So it's pick one character and write the story, and then let's see what kind of narratives we can start to create.
And I think that phrase of interoperability gets dropped quite a bit, but that's something that we're also looking at quite a bit, where with this year's Coachella, we had quite a few AR, XR activations that were a partnership with Meta for Instagram lenses, a partnership with Niantic, a partnership with Epic Games and YouTube. And we're looking at how do we use the NFTs to tie a lot of these disparate activations together, so you can move from a mobile AR experience into a metaverse world building experience through the Discord, and then into other types of experiences that can change over time. And again, that NFT can be your common thread for moving, whether it's an avatar or your sort of VIP ticket to gain access IRL. So definitely exploring a lot of those things.
Mm-hmm. What does interoperability mean for Jadu?
So again, like our big traction was coming from not making our own collection of avatars, but catering to people who are so passionate, like communities of people surrounded by, like, if you know Deadfellas or Fluffs or Cyberkongs, these are other, like Cybercoven, they're these like people who are really, really passionate about their collections. And so for us to build jetpacks and hoverboards and make a platform for them was really, really for something to spread its wings that people care about. So, and also with the sandbox jetpacks, we have it going both ways, but we were able to harness the passion of all these different communities and bring it to one place and get a lot of momentum off of that.
What are you seeing, Maddie, in the investment space in terms, you've been in this and watching this space for a long time, longer than anyone I know. How are you seeing that change, particularly in the past, year or so?
I think that the infrastructure is a lot of people have been investing in infrastructure, and that's sort of been the key on both on the Web3 side and the AR side, is like, how do we get both of these things to exist from an infrastructure standpoint? But in the last year, I think the trend has been really interesting content in place, like people seeing, more than just content, but like a community, like Jadu being a actual content creator, storyteller. You're combining almost like a animation studio with a community, and it's like heavily technical, where you're building your own underlying infrastructure too, in order to make everything come together. So we've seen a lot more investment, and we've seen a lot of game venture capital launching game funds. And so I think games is like the overarching, historical, engagement of how people play online. But I think that will be rebranded down the road to what they're going to be investing in, Jadu. They're going to be investing in the metaverse, where you're going to be leveraging Web3 and VR or AR. And I think those are really interesting funds to be keeping an eye out right now, because they're looking for this really interactive engagement where the people in the community are at the core of it.
I think the community part is really interesting, particularly because for the most part, we were talking about tech, and then you start talking about creatives, right? Like there's a visual component, and then you add on community. And so now the truly successful startup, I should say I was introduced, but angel investor in AR, VR, and AI, but also as part of the WXR fund. To look at, to make sure that the companies that we invest in have expertise across all of those pretty different skill sets, and particularly community, right? The question that I always ask for anybody that comes and pitches and says, and community is a really important part of this, is, oh, great, who do you have on your team that's built a community before? And there aren't many people, right? Like it is becoming a skill that is absolutely necessary for some of the companies.
Yeah. Discord is like the anchor point for most communities right now in the Web3 and gaming space, so it's really tied between both. There's a demo at the AR house, what was that room called?
Playground.
AWE Playground, that they have where you can actually interact on Discord with augmented reality, and it's asynchronous, which was really fun. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, this comes to life in a Discord space, bringing out the fun playfulness of AR, the like asynchronous, community building of Discord, and it's a game. So all of a sudden it's like a game within a, community platform that I thought was really interesting. But it's all experimental right now. Like I think it's really fun to see these different things coming up and being built.
So for those in the crowd that maybe are just starting out in this space, where would you suggest that they start? In terms of like owning, right? And maybe not design, well, I mean, anywhere actually, right? Developing and creating or owning.
If you want to go on the AR side, I think the AR house, I'm plugging them again, but I think going and talking with the founders there and like getting more involved in the Snap lenses, the games that they're building, they're doing a lot of really interesting content right now. But on the NFT side, I would say like go on OpenSea and try to pick something that you're interested in or curious about. Look up the community and join the Discord community. Go through the purchasing process of setting up a Ethereum wallet so that you can accept that NFT token. Show it off to your friends. Ask people about it. Like go engaged in the community, and obviously don't spend crazy millions of dollars on it, but like just have fun with it. Pick something fun or funny or a cat meme that you think is hilarious and go buy the NFT of it and just see what you can do with it and start messing with the space, because it's like, I don't know, it's something that we need to play with and we all need to just keep like, being curious about right now.
So actually to backtrack a little bit, you were asking about if 2.0 would stick around for a while. Mm-hmm. We were doing some consulting work for Dapper Labs, and so their Dapper wallet is trying to be 2.0. So it's a browser-based wallet, which I think is actually probably is the lowest barrier to entry. We have an amazing partnership with FTX, with Coachella, but I actually think that the Dapper wallet is probably the easiest one to jump into if you just kind of want to get your feet wet.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I've been trying to wrap my head around is how to kind of create that world you walk around in where you're seeing the augmented reality and they're anchored to places, and it's like world scale AR, and how to use the NFTs and the blockchain to anchor content in a decentralized way, because in the past we've worked with Google on their cloud anchors where they want to have the big network that owns everything. So what is the antithesis to that is decentralized? And so these are questions I ask myself, and I think if people are just trying to get into it, I think there's actually really a very large barrier to entry. And as I dig through reading white papers, I think if you're not scared of white papers, I would say read a few white papers on some of these different topics of how can AR get, how can you update metadata on a blockchain to encode geospatial data. Not a typical kind of entry level thing, but if you're not scared of white papers, that's where I would go.
And you've made some of your own NFTs, like even prior to the Coachella experience and that. How was that for you? Because you're actually a very experienced AR creator. So how was the shift from basic AR to NFT?
So I really would just say I dabbled in the NFTs. I went to OpenSea and just minted a few. I worked with some friends to do some other things where we were minting them, but I would not say I was an expert on the crypto artist side.
Yeah.
On AR, I sat down one day and I downloaded Unity and I downloaded Unreal. And I was like, I'm going to give myself a week to try to pick one, because I can't learn both at the same time. And I fell in love with Unreal Engine. So if anyone out there really enjoys 3D authorship, Unreal is just an endless world of amazing creativity. And I'm not just saying that because we work with them.
Olivia, what's your journey been like in the AR and NFT space, and how was it to shift from one to the other?
Yeah, so the first time I tried VR, I was playing super hot, and I started Unity tutorials like the day after. Part of that because, in the past, gaming combat was something I didn't have kind of the controller literacy that all my friends have, and so being able to actually just fight with my body it just all clicked for me. And then from there, I've been with Jadu since we were doing narrative stuff on the film festival circuit, and we got swept away doing this Web3 NFT stuff, and that's been my entry to it. The beginning of this year, I started telling my friend Jack, who's our CTO, like I finally started buying other NFTs. Like I'm finally into NFTs. He was like, finally, and again, kind of if you're looking for an entry point, I would say buy a Jadu asset because it's not to just plug our stuff, but there are collections that are just trying to raise their floor price, and then there are others that are using Web3 and NFTs as a vehicle, as we are, and care about long-form storytelling. If you care about AR, I'd say look into Jadu, because a lot of stuff out there is kind of 15-second filters and stuff, and we're getting to really make true expansive long-form AR.
And actually, as I look at it, I'm not sure how many entry-level people are out there. I feel like there's a lot of experienced people, but I do think Instagram, their AR Lens Studio is actually a great place to start if you're not a hardcore Unity or Unreal Engine developer.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, Maddie, but I'm getting pitched a lot of platforms, create your NFT in 5-second platforms, which are, in different levels of readiness to launch and at different levels of scalability. Are you seeing things in that space? Because I do think it's a new platform, and there are going to be a new paradigm, and there are going to be platforms and tools that help us build in scale.
Yeah, I think that the marketplaces are going to be the first place, like OpenSea, where you can go do it, and they are hand-holding you through the process, because that is what their business is based on. I think you're going to have different games start to open the door for objects, new NFTs to be created by the community and brought into the community. It was sort of like that Slack app that you had where you could bring in your own emojis into Slack way back when, and it's that type of idea of like allowing the community to participate in the reactions or the tools and the things that are being created. But yes, I think the ease for the average person to not have to go into Unity or Unreal to be able to create the object, that's one piece of the puzzle. And then the minting side of making smart contracts smart and making sure that they are audited. I think there's a lot of, we've seen things happen in the space, and just trying to de-risk as much as we can from when you launch your collection to making sure that the right wallets are getting what they are supposed to be getting. There's a lot of pieces of that infrastructure that's going to need to be built and or is being built in different capacity right now. So there will continue to be all of those layers to make it much easier for the average community of non-technical people that want to have an NFT or an engaged, and to leverage this as an engagement for their community. So I think we're going to continue to see more and more pitches in this space.
Yeah, I'm also interested in anything that starts to or continues to let people share whatever NFTs that they have, whether it be audio or visual. Most of them are visual now. Some of them are a combination. Just because I think that as more people have them, more people are going to want to show them off. And how are you doing that? Are you doing it in your home? Are you doing it? Is it through a browser? Is it in the real world space?
Is it sitting in my wallet and I'm just showing you my wallet?
Yeah.
The 2D representation of it in my wallet on my phone.
Right. Or can we project it in front of us and share it with everybody, and I'll put on smart glasses and it'll be great. Interact with it, right? That would be great. I think one of the NFTs, I was at South by Southwest, and I can't remember the name of the platform, but they had created a basketball where you could see like all the nodules on the basketball. It was that level of detail. It's insane. but really cool. And then you could shift the basketball. I'm like, oh, okay, this is giving me, it's not just a picture, it's giving me more ideas of what NFTs will ultimately be able to do.
Yeah, and I think if you think about ownership and some of the things that the NFTs are for the PFP projects representative of, I think at some point, a lot of people would love to see the blockchain replace county records. So you're buying a house, and the NFT is the conduit where you're able to buy a house as quickly as you buy an NFT, and you're cutting out the month-long process. And so I think for me, the idea of this PFP stuff is like version 0.1. We're not even at 1.0 yet. And so I think the idea of showing off how many Bored Apes you have in your wallet is, to me, not what this is about.
But taking that Bored Ape and creating an IP-based brand that you
Right.
now have a hot dog stand in LA, and if you own a Bored Ape, you can go eat your hot dog, you can get a free hot dog or a discount or something. That is interesting. That starts to get more creative and more interesting. In real life, as an ownership, as a community member, I now have access to something I didn't have access to before.
That's super interesting. So related to that, and we just have time for a couple more questions, and then we're going to take some Q&A. What are you seeing? How are you seeing brands adopt this new space? Web3 and NFTs. Obviously Coachella jumped right in,
Right.
and believes in it and spent time developing.
Well, I think for us, we definitely have brand sponsorships and brand partners, but we also look at the festival as like a literal stage for artists to show themselves to a much broader audience. So if you're launching an album or a tour, you might have 2,000 people show up to your concert during the tour, but at Coachella you could have 250,000 people come and experience your music, and so that's almost like a trade show in a way for bands to show themselves off to a larger market. So I think the NFTs and the community space around crypto is also Coachella's way of allowing the musicians as brands to express themselves in a new medium. So for us, aside from the brand partners, the sponsors,
Right.
the musicians, I think are being a little slow to adopt this, honestly. But I think there's a bit of a curiosity and a wait and see attitude. So I would say mostly it's a wait and see is the response we've been getting.
The thing about artists that I think is interesting, right? I think we'll get to the point where you'd buy an album and then you'd get the free coupon for the download the MP3s or whatever, right? Like we'll get to the and download the NFTs, right?
There was news last night that Kanye just filed trademarks for non-fungible items and stuff. So it's, even though he just said months ago,
Right, but
don't
it was
talk to me
not-
about
it's not good.
NFTs, but of course it's happening, so it's.
We actually had one artist, manager that we talked to, and he said that their fans, they love their fans, and they actually don't feel the need to make any more money off of them. And so we actually thought that was refreshing.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if it is actually for everyone.
But it could be a badge of honor, right? Like you buy an album, and with the album you get a free NFT.
Or
Right.
you make money off it, then it's a value. Then you're making money for your
Right,
fans.
so-
You own this NFT because you bought the album, and you could sell it for 20 grand, and your life has changed too. So it's
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
The other one I heard was acquiring pieces, like if you were a super fan of an artist, and an artist put out a song as an NFT, you would acquire part of that NFT as a super fan, and you would own part of that song. And then whatever royalties come back, you got part of that. And I was like, that's cool. I mean, as a super fan of so many bands, that would be the thing for me that would really will me in.
We see that with people who hold our Grimes hoverboard and our Lewis Hamilton hoverboard. I'm not, super fans who and these artists really, they design the hoverboards to be their brand and their unique expression. Like Snoop Dogg's looks like a lowrider. And the first time I saw it, I was like, that is so cool and very Snoop Dogg.
And that's so him. Yeah.
Well, I think we've shifted on the internet, just on social media in general, to really feeling like we have a personal connection with a lot of these artists, right? So we're behind the scenes on the Instagram tour. We're watching them do their everyday life or engaging with their family or, tweeting about what they just did on stage or whatever. So we feel like we have a much more personal relationship with them than they do with us. And so I think this actually could be a way for the artists to re-engage with their community and actually get to know the community a little bit better in a tighter, more niche setting, like a Discord or a private part of Discord where you now have your super fans that you get to have more, learn more about your fans that way too.
Yeah, Grimes will show up in our Discord and just be a human with us.
Yeah.
Just chatting with us.
Yeah,
It's very
just like Prince used to do.
It's more accessible. It's not, you're not a VIP at a concert getting your shirt torn off of you. Like you're able to kind of maintain that boundary, but also get to know people a little bit more.
Cool. So we've got 8 minutes. If you guys want to ask any questions, feel free to walk up to the mic. We'd love to hear from you. And, or if you have experience in this space and kind of want to do a shout out of your own AR, NFT, Web3. Hi.
Hi, I'm Phil. I work for Unity. So something I was curious about is what are you each excited about in terms of unlocks for the overall ecosystem, whether that's blockchain infrastructure like proof of stake or layer 2s, or whether it's regulatory policies, or whether it's things like geospatial understanding, so like different kinds of world contexts that you can add to your experience.
So this might be the obvious answer, but I think what we're looking to integrate very soon, or actually right now, is the avatars. And now we can see avatars moving from world to world, whether that's from an augmented world or an actual metaverse sort of world. So I think having the ability to sell like an artist's like avatar to their fans, and then for them to be able to have that avatar and experience that within a curated world, and then jump out of that and then jump into Fortnite and then play as that and be able to represent themselves through that community. And so maybe this is the low-hanging fruit, but I think the avatars is like the go-to right now. I don't know if anybody else wants to answer that, but.
Do you have anything?
Well, just on a geospatial, there's like been a lot of, there's a lot of VR here, and we are optimistic about AR being this layer over our physical world. And we have a vision of we release a game and a bunch of people go to their local park and they have these interactions with each other, and that means a lot to us to kind of have a metaverse be built out in the real world. Maybe we activate something based off of the actual like plant life around you. So there's like a rich world in terms of metaverse ethos and ethics, I think.
And I just think a lot of the technical layers are going to get solved. There's so many really smart people working on proof of stake. There's so many smart people working on this interoperability for avatars. Geospatial data is going to get solved. We've got tons of people that are out there trying to solve this. My piece is a little bit more intangible. I think that the human side of it is how do you get me as a human to engage with all of this content on a regular basis? So are you going to send me, am I going to get more notifications? And how do notifications change? And are you going to add it to my calendar? Like, how are you going to get me to engage in these worlds in a new way? Because right now it's all the same. And I don't think anyone's really figured out, like, how do we communicate this to the people that when they, at the right time, and maybe it'll be geospatially located, or maybe it'll be when I get close to my computer, or when I get close to my phone, or when I put on my headset. But like, how do you actually start to work into my life versus me coming to you? I feel like in VR, AR, we've always had to go to the device for this content. How can you get to me just that way?
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I am Mayur. I have a question on interoperability and specifications. So we have like ERC 721 and all the decentralized metaverse can integrate that component while you're building the world. But if you have a 3D model or AR as part of the metadata, they still don't have 3D model interoperability. So what about AR? Is anyone working on the specifications where all this virtual world or decentralized metaverses will integrate that kind of component?
For us, yes, like we've had to create guidelines for people who submit their collections to be playable avatars with Jadu. Right now, we're only working with humanoids. We have had all kinds of shapes be submitted to be playable avatars in AR. And at first, we were just taking collections and working with what however they'd configured their assets. But now we have a spec sheet about it. It has to be labeled this way. It has to be like a GLB or what have you. It has to have the token ID and the asset name so we can put it through our pipeline correctly. And so we import things at runtime and configure them there. And it's, for us, we're at least definitely creating an infrastructure so that we can have, use all of these different assets made by all these different studios in the same exact way on our app. And that'll just keep going, as those have to be. We know now that the term metaverse ready means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So within Web3, we hear constantly that we're still early, it's still the Wild West, we're building the plane while we're flying it, et cetera. Eric, you mentioned pretty high barrier to entry. Still, from a UX standpoint, there are a ton of pain points. There's so many people that say, what even is a wallet? Why do I need it? Why do I want to buy a JPEG? There's a lot of questions. It's not,
Right.
We can use Apple Pay to buy groceries. Have you been building anything, or have you witnessed anything being built that addresses those aspects of this space? Because I think in a hype cycle standpoint, we are still very early. So what do you see making it easier to use moving forward?
So that is a great question. So I think the pain points are intense, and I think for myself as well, like sign for a wallet and to go through all the different processes to connect a bank account and to do the things that don't quite actually seem decentralized. Try to make it a little easier, but move us away from that sort of decentralized, reality. So this is maybe like in the weeds, but we've been looking at how do we use NFC readers to embed like functionality within wallets to use NFC readers to create functionality. And so that's already in the middle of that pipeline. You've already gotten people onboarded into the wallets. So I'm not sure if it solves that part of it. But if we're trying to create utility, whether it's through a wristband or through a wallet on your phone, how do we let people update metadata and do things on the blockchain using a seamless interaction? And so those are some things that we've been working on within that sort of user journey. But that upfront onboarding is still certainly a pain point.
There's an award going out at NFT NYC for which collection has done the best onboarding for people, and I am a holder with a collection called BFF, and they have, they have a lot of star power, Gwyneth Paltrow, like Mila Kunis, all of that. So they handhold in their Discord really well for people who don't know the first thing about this stuff. They're the most valuable thing you can have is a good mod who shows up and handholds. So that collection is up for that award. I'm sure there's others. I don't know the whole list, but there are people where that's kind of their utility is being an entry point for people. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. One more.
It's a great answer. I love it. They did a good job with that.
They do.
Yeah.
So I've heard a lot about possession of digital assets and that possessing assets that'll be represented in augmented reality or virtual reality. But in the 2017 period, and I'm sure there was history before that, there was a cryptocurrency called Decentraland that I think changed its name to Mana. And it's kind of the idea of virtual plots of land in the metaverse, or I don't know how they deliver value in terms of being contiguous or whatever. But I was just wondering, is there any buzz around that in terms of virtual land ownership or democratized domain spatial inside of virtual reality or augmented reality?
Anybody want to jump on that one?
Yeah, Maddie.
I can jump on it, but do you want to? No.
And that's actually not my space. What I'm really interested in is how do we map the world in a decentralized way, because I've been working with Google in the past around cloud anchors to map the world in a very centralized way. So I'm very interested in how do we associate content, AR content into the real world. But I feel like as far as what you're asking about specifically, maybe.
Yeah, I can talk about Decentraland. Decentraland's been doing a great job. I think they are also hand-holding from if you want to learn anything about DAOs, they are also a cool place to learn. They've open sourced their entire decentralized autonomous organization, how they're setting up the organization so that everyone who's involved or owns land has voting power in the governance of it. So I would they're still around. Mana is their token that you use to buy a plot of land. And they have actually worked, I think they've been working, I want to say it's with Unity, where you can actually put a virtual reality experience on your land now and be able to invite people to it. I'm not exactly sure how the deep leaking works or how you're getting there right now, but they're one that's been around and is still going strong, and I would definitely check it out. ENS and Unstoppable Domains would be the other two organizations I would check out from a domain ownership side, because there's a lot of conversations happening around, how do you own the unique link to the web that you are building or decentralizing. And so those would be two. They have two different philosophies, but I would look into ENS and Unstoppable Domains or Handshake as the sort of three that are in the space, thinking very heavily about that.
Great question.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank our panelists for coming up and talking about this. It would be fascinating if we could fast forward 3 years and sit here again and see how things have changed. Maybe we should make that happen. But thank you for coming, and thank you all for listening. We'll be outside if anybody has any other questions.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.